What's good, everybody? My name is Jack Dawkins. Welcome to season 4 of Stage Dive. For those of you who've been listening, you know that the podcast traditionally has been about tips and tricks that make great performances on stage. How to prepare, how to rehearse, how to navigate an audience. But this season, I feel like we've leaned more into a new category, which is the origin story of all of these artists. How did each of these performers become the person, the performer, the artist that they are today? How did they go from zero to getting on stage? And how do they navigate all of the bumps and twists and turns that make the creative journey both beautiful and really challenging? I was blown away by all of our guests this season, and I really, really hope you enjoyed this. My guest on the podcast today is Abby Ballin, and that might be the greatest last name of all time. Abby is a comedian living and working down in Florida, though she is originally from New York City, just like me. And a lot of what we talk about today is how the contrast in where you perform can really help you understand how your material is hitting when you see the way that different crowds might react to it. We also go into some darker parts of her life, some things that have been really difficult, and it was a good reminder for me that it's important for us as artists to honor that there are dark times and there are difficult things that we navigate in life, and for better or worse, that's often where some of our best art comes from. This was a really powerful conversation. I so enjoyed it. Please enjoy my time with Abby. So my first question is, where are you? Because it looks like you're in front of a mysterious barn of some kind.
I know. It's a barn door. It slides.
Ooh,
Ooh, I
snazzy.
know. It is very snazzy. It's actually a bathroom door. So I'm like sitting in front of my bathroom because I like the wood. I'm like, oh, let's look like
Yeah,
a
no, it's a
little
nice
farmer girl.
background. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cute. I try to switch it up. Also, I just got back from Minnesota. I was there for a week, and my place looks like I brought the farm back with me.
Oh
So
my
I had to find a place that could have a clean background so people can think I have my life together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I also really appreciate that when you moved the door, there was just a wall behind it.
Yeah.
It's like there's no mystery back there. We're just this like wall on wall. It's all good.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Totally.
Like being aware of the background you have when you're speaking to someone digitally, I would name as something like we didn't expect to be thinking about, but during the pandemic we thought about a whole bunch.
Mm.
Like what what was the shutdown like for you? Because if you were a live performer and stages were kind of your thing, life looked a lot different for, oh, I don't know, a year. Although I guess Florida was a little different, but like life definitely looked different for a minute or two. So like what else were you thinking about during that time?
So yeah, very fortunate to have been in South Florida, like hate us or love us, like our shutdown just wasn't as bad as the rest of the world.
For
So
sure.
I was only really down for maybe 2, max 3 months.
Wow.
So I know everyone hates me right now, but it's okay. But even in that window, because when that window was happening, we didn't know how long it was going to go on. So we
For
did
sure.
all share that same experience of like, how long are we going to be trapped? Luckily, being in Florida, I had a lot of access to outside, and because of social media and stuff, I kind of just changed the way I performed. So instead of performing on stage, I was doing a lot of live stuff, not necessarily like the Zoom shows that a lot of comics did, but
Yeah.
I was doing, I think just to keep sane, I found like these old workout videos from the 80s, 90s. It was like, I called it Sweating with Cindy Crawford's workout videos. And I would go live and encourage people to do the Cindy Crawford workout videos with me. And it was comical, but it was also like kind of hard.
Actually helping people.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, like I was like in the best shape of my life. So the pandemic, I'm kind of like, can we do another shutdown reset? Like I really like I could use that again. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was working out like every day, finding different ways of connecting because I did those live workouts with my friends in LA, New York, Canada, like all these different places. So that was the nice thing about that very hard moment for a lot of people, but we
For
were all
sure.
connected and going through the same experience. So people that you wouldn't have normally ever connected with or even had rekindled a connection because there was a lot of people that I had lost touch with, but in this moment we now had something to relate on, which we
Yeah.
hadn't in years. So that was really nice. but short-lived because once Florida opened back up and we were back to life as usual, people really did not like that. And what went from me feeling very close to people made me feel like, oh, I'm like the personified virus myself. So it changed very fast.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, like you sort of became like a place to project anger for all the people that were still stuck inside.
Hmm. Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
Hmm.
That's uncomfortable. That
Yeah.
sounds rough.
It's really taken a toll on a lot of my relationships, being from New York. And I had
Sure.
only recently moved to South Florida before the pandemic. So I wasn't necessarily like the transplant that like fled during, the pandemic and came to Florida. I had already established myself here for like a year or two prior. So I was already here. I was already doing things. But I was still, before the pandemic, going back and forth almost on a monthly basis to New York. And with the pandemic, that stopped.
Sure.
So, I don't know. Like, yeah, in the beginning, we were all close. I felt like back, like as one with my New Yorkers and my family. And then 3 months in, I'm out, I'm doing shows, I'm, in the world again. And they were
Yeah.
not. And it was very sad. And you know, only now in the last like year where I felt like I could even kind of go back to New York and see my friends
Mm,
and family without
yeah.
them being like not wanting me to come near them almost. So
Mm,
that was hard, but time and everything kind of
yeah.
heals itself and there's a process to it. And, you know, it's, yeah, that's weird going back on that time. I feel like a lot of people still talk about it. And yeah, I'm kind of like very much like, oh yeah, we can get real and talk about it, but the feelings come up, and I'm like, oh, let's skip over that.
Never mind. Let's
Yeah,
shovel that back under the earth
yeah,
and
put it
not talk
behind
about
the
it.
wall, the
Yeah,
door wall.
exactly. You go on the stucco, close the sliding door. Let's be done with you. Thank
Yeah,
you
let's
very much.
reach that. Yeah, it's
That's
uncomfortable.
so,
Hmm.
yeah, that's super interesting. I like it has been really interesting. I think we're not going to spend the whole podcast on this, I promise. And I think it's been super interesting to see that like there's a new booster coming. And like when it was in the thick of it, it was like everybody booster all like I'm from New York also. My family's in Manhattan. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, which is about as blue as you can get.
Hmm.
And so it was like immediate, complete. Everybody was like, yes to the shots, yes to the measures, yes to the mask, like 100%. We got to do everything. And now, like it's only 2 years later. It's not like it was this long ago. And the general audience like, man, fuck it. Like I don't really want to get jabbed again. I feel like we haven't done any research on whether or not this is good or bad. Like, yeah, we'll just let it go. Um, it's really fascinating, and I think a lot of people have sore spots that they're like, we're all just going to be cool now, but we're not going to talk about how we got to this place over the last 2 years. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's more just that there's so many people that are really stuck on it as to why I don't want to talk about it. Like if I feel like people have like kind of
Mm,
moved past things, I'm totally happy to reflect like on it. But
sure.
I guess just like with my life and my history, I don't like ever like playing a victim card or anything, even if it's like a societal victim card. I'm like,
Mm,
things happen and you can't ignore them. Like you process them, you move through it. You
of
might
course.
be most likely forever changed from it. But if you keep dwelling on it like it's still happening,
Yes.
you're giving it way too much power. And
Mm,
so I don't like to do that. That's why I'm a little bit like, I catch myself. I'm like, oh shit, we're talking about this thing that's a couple years ago that was very, very impactful. And so many, like a lot of people lost so many people, and
yeah.
that's not something to laugh about or not take seriously. Like lives were changed, lives were lost. It was a big deal. But there's going to be another big deal and another big deal and another big deal forever as long as you're alive and breathing. So let's keep it moving.
Yeah. 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 Where does that perspective come from?
um so I feel like I was always a very like awake, alert, inquisitive child person. Like I if you look at me from like baby, I was like boom, like not a lot of talking, a lot of watching. And always curious, not like let me like poke. the bear curious, but more
Yeah.
like I see this happening. It doesn't quite make sense. Let me ask some questions and like really get to the root as to why these things are happening. And I feel like that definitely came from a lot of chaos in my family and a lot of just
Mm,
like growing up in New York and a lot of moving pieces and meeting tons of people constantly and different,
yeah.
just so much information coming at me from a young age. And instead of being like trying to be anxious about it or ignoring it, I feel like I was very much like, why are you doing this? What is this coming from? Tell me more about you. And I feel like because of all those things, my lens on life is a little different. However, you ask like, why is this? Because like the grand picture of kind of a little doomsdayish is once you're like paying attention and you're awake, you're gonna kind of see a lot. And also, I think being open, people tell you a lot. So it's also something that people
Mm,
would constantly dump their life on and their things. And I would listen and just kind of be like a judgment free space. But that started like super young. So I feel like I
mm,
never had this rose colored glasses of like life is anything you want it to be. And what a beautiful, like, I guess I was just very much taught like life is hard and it is what you put into it. And it's like,
yeah.
yes, you can get a lot of what you want, not everything, you can get a lot, but you have to work for it and you have to go after it. So there was never really like a lot of like when I watched a movie, let's say, about Disney, I was never seeing myself in that character and thinking like, oh my God, one day I'll be the princess. It was more like,
Mm,
ooh, how did they make this film? That's interesting how that they did this. Let me go make some fantasy up too. And I would be like, I'm going to take this and create something of my own. But I also knew it was kind of false. I never was too gullible, I guess, or believed too much.
yeah. Yeah. Super interesting. Um, it's funny, like, I don't, you use the word doomsday, and like, I totally understand how that slant could be. I think there's also a lot of deep wisdom in like carrying a bunch of shit around,
Hmm.
like, I don't know, to honor it or to try and extract as much as you can, like, whatever, like, doesn't usually go well.
Mm,
Like wandering around with a whole shitload of baggage where you're like, no, 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 this is like, this is my story. This is my, it's like, it's not.
mm,
Like, it's some shit that happened. Learn what you learned, take that with you, leave the rest. Like, I think a lot of us walk around heavier than we need to.
mhm,
And part of it is, again, like, I know the narrative, like, life is hard, life is work, you got to put in the blah 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 blah. But it's a fucking amazing how much of that work we create for ourselves rather than actually going out and doing work, which is what actually creates what you want.
mhm.
But instead we stay mired in this, like, oh no, I'm working through this, I'm working through my shit. It's like, some working through some shit is good for a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of the like therapy. How do you feel about therapy? It's like I think
Mm,
for everyone to be reflective, absolutely. To get another perspective, please do. To,
yeah,
be okay to hear someone's side, but to live your whole life kind of as that crutch, as that like almost addiction of just talking
yeah,
through your problem, and I'm like, it should be something I wouldn't say necessarily graduate, but like kind of. It's like you should do it when you need it, but it should get to a point where you can do it for yourself and you don't have to be
yeah,
so reliant on this person. And it doesn't mean you can't go back. Of course, there's always like,
of course.
different things happen in your life. You got to check back in. But some people that is just, it almost becomes like this self, it's like, I don't know, I don't want to call it like narcissistic, but it's like you're feeding that monster that just wants to kind of talk about all the things that are wrong
Right,
and
right.
thinking that that's going to be just because you're giving voice and airtime to it that then it's going to be solved because, well, I'm aware of this thing. It's like, yes, good, next step, next step, next step.
And now what?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sure we could make people very upset by diving into therapy.
Sorry, yeah.
Um, no, no, no. I think it's important, right? Like, um, I think this is partly because of the internet, but like the way things pick up momentum nowadays, like this is good for you. And everyone's like, fuck, do all of it. And it's like, whoa. Like not like everyone has to eat all protein all the time forever. And if you eat a single piece of pasta, you'll fucking die.
Mhm.
It's like, are you sure? We've had bread for a really long time. Like I know things have changed, but like easy, easy. And same thing with therapy. Like the angle that I find myself getting stuck in is like there's also like a pathological nature to it. And they're trying to figure out what's wrong. Nothing's wrong. You're a fucking human.
Mhm.
Like shame, guilt, anxiety, like we've been feeling these things for millennia
Mhm.
before the internet, before social media. So like, yeah, you're going to feel shit. Yes, it's a great way to talk through it and maybe reduce some of the shame you feel about having some of those experiences. But like the solution is not in that office.
Yeah.
Never has been, never will be. It's in the choices and the actions you take outside of the office. And I feel like some people get to the office are like, booyah, did it. It's like, ooh, I have bad news. Like this is square one
Yeah.
of this lifelong process of developing self-awareness, going out in the world and continuing to improve yourself literally until you're dead.
Mhm.
You don't have to, but you can. And I highly recommend it
Well, I'm so
as a
happy we're
general
in
rule.
a similar mindset because it can be very touchy nowadays with talking about all that stuff. It's
Yeah.
interesting how much how sensitive the world is right now. When I feel like in a lot of ways we're actually like a lot stronger than we've been in the past, you know? And yet
Mm,
we act so weak.
mm.
I don't know if I want to talk about all that. I'm like, ooh, I'm like, this
Him.
might go someplace. Stop.
Well, I mean, I think within comedy in particular, there's been a conversation, and it seems to be very polarizing, where there's certainly a larger awareness of like, it's harder to do comedy because the way people emotionally experience some material has made it harder to connect with audiences. I think there's a subset of comedians who are like, fuck you, stop being a pussy. This is funny.
Mhm.
That's one approach. Some comedians are trying really hard to go in the other direction of like, I'm going to bend myself into this puzzle piece that works around every single corner case. And like, I'm going to find the window. And that's very admirable. And then I imagine there's a lot in the middle who are like, I hear you. I hear that things are triggering and like I'm doing what I love and I'm doing it from a place of care. And like, I'm not doing it to be shitty. I'm not doing it to be mean. Like I'm doing it because I have questions because I'm curious. Like so much of how you describe yourself as a child, it's like, that's what a comic
Mm.
is. Someone who watches the world and is like, has anyone else noticed that this doesn't make any fucking sense?
Mhm.
Like, am I the only one seeing
Yeah.
this? So I'm curious, like in the realm of like this shifting tide of I don't know, call it emotionality within the populace here. Like, how are you experiencing that as a comic?
So it's definitely out there. And especially if you go to different cities like LA, New York, like Florida's Florida. It's a beast of itself, you know, like you can kind of get away with a lot here, but there still has, you know, certain areas has their sensitivities as well. But Florida, one thing I love about it is most people don't give a can I curse? Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, most people don't give a fuck. So I like that side of it, you know. It's a little feral. I like that. But yeah, when you go to New York, but I think a huge part of what you can get away with saying is how well did you let the audience know where you stand, who you are, and like get them on
Mm,
your side. Because if someone is on your side and knows who you are, like they can connect with you and they like you, which is everything, you can say a lot more than you ever could if you haven't established yourself on stage as to what's your viewpoint, you know, what's your sense of humor and who are
right.
you as a human being, you know. And that's also comes with how much stage time do you even get, you know, like can you do that really quick
Totally.
when you might only have 5-10 minutes on stage, you know, like so depends that too. It's not always the easiest thing when you have, you know, a small amount of stage time. But if you establish that, find a way of really getting them fast on your side, I find you can get away with saying kind of anything you want wherever you are. But that's the trick
Mm.
is did you do that?
Recently died, and it was crazy. I got to see him, and I was just so thrown back at how like it was just very matter of fact. Like grandpa's done, grandpa's dead. Say goodbye to grandpa.
Sorry.
You know, grandpa's done.
Grandpa's done. Can someone get it?
It's like he was in the oven.
Guys, grandpa's done. So
We're gonna eat him now.
She's a freak, people. She's a full-on freak over there. That's why I want me to pee on him. He told me, just pee on you. You're on the show. Just pee on me. Yes. Your husband's a freak. He also told me not to include him. Ha 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 ha. What's happening? You're in it. You're with me. Golden showers for everyone. I have to pee again. You ready? You ready? It's hot. Ah! Can't do it. Stop it. How long have you been married? Because it's about to end tonight.
Yeah. What has it been like to kind of craft or develop your material in a way that you feel like helps you do that?
Sorry, repeat the question. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know. I may want to reword it. I usually I see a question and I have to walk my way to it, but sometimes it means I wander along the way. Like, what do you do in your material to help people connect to you more deeply so that you can share more completely?
Got it. In general, I am very like autobiographical with my comedy. So I share a lot about my past, my family, my relationships, but also like currently what's going on with me. And I do that just because that's what I do, but also I do think by sharing those personal, intimate sides of me, it's the easiest way to get somebody to know you and on your side. So by being so vulnerable, by sharing, stuff that's really real. And now the side of it is a lot of times I do embellish and trick and do all the things that comedians do. So are they buying it is the different, like, are they going to believe me and are they going to know when I'm kidding and when I'm not? That's more in the kind of play that I feel like I've just been developing over years of doing it. But you can see sometimes when you didn't nail it on the head and you're like, ooh, okay, they're starting to feel bad for me right now. That's not what I wanted. Let me try to play with this a little bit, get out of the mud here for a second so they can realize like, I'm cool with this. Like, I'm okay with it.
This is all
good.
good.
I'm literally
Yeah.
on stage right now because I'm okay with all of this. And my point is like, if I can laugh at all this stuff, hopefully you can laugh at your stuff because that's kind of what you got to do. Sometimes life is just so horrific and horrible and bizarre, but there's no way there's not one funny moment in that catastrophe. Like there's always something that you can laugh about, even if it's just like, holy shit, I can't believe all those things happened to that one person. That's so wild.
Yes. Yeah. Quick sidebar. I have also I'm sure it happens in comedy, although I have a background in storytelling, and you want to talk about people getting on stage to talk about stuff that they're not okay with yet. That is some uncomfortable shit because you as an audience, there's nothing you can do. Oh my God, it's like being held hostage. It is the fucking pits. So I know where those audience members are like, oh my God, no. And you're like, wait, I got you. Let me nudge this right. We're going to fix this.
The trauma dumping that happens a lot is uncomfortable. And not we are all doing this to, for a lot of reasons. And one of it is to heal. It is part, humor is medicine. So it is part of that, but you got to know when it's okay, you can do a little bit for you, but that we're all in this together. Let's have some consideration, and the fact that this is supposed to be entertainment. Never forget, it's entertainment. Yeah.
Yes, 1,000%. I don't want you to speak on behalf of all comics, but where's the line when it comes to embellishment? Because I think people exaggerating stories is as old as stories. That's why stories become memorable and fun to tell. And I think it was Hassan Minhaj just got in trouble because he told a story and it turned out some meaningful detail of the story that was kind of the crux of the whole thing never happened, and people are like, boo, fucking hiss. So I'm curious, like, as you think about whether it's tags or punching up a set, like, where's the line with embellishment?
He's on stage telling the story. It's an interview.
On stage telling the
I feel
story.
like the line is the stage. Like, if you're on stage, I don't think that you should be holding fact checking. It's about like, it's a performance. And if you are being honest at some points, great, bonus. You got to know me a little bit more. But there's plenty of comedians, performers think that almost nothing is, it's observational. It has nothing to do with personal, like, so I don't
Right.
really feel like anyone should really care that much if, especially if a comedian says something that's not exactly verbatim what happened. Like, half the time, if it was, it wouldn't be as funny if you just like retold it exactly how it happened. Then also, what's the difference between you telling that story or anyone else who was at that same event? Like, you got to make it your own. So I don't know. I don't think that, I think a lot of times we need to embellish it. It's like that's part of the job.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I like that answer. How would you describe how your comedy has evolved? Because you've been doing comedy for
Almost 5 years now.
Okay, cool. And like this may not be true for you, but in my experience, like usually the first 2-3 years for an artist is like exponential growth, where you're like, ooh, fuck that up, and like whoop, quick, and then there's a refinement process as the curve kind of levels. Like you find your voice, you find your style. So like, can you just talk about what some of those different phases look like for you? Kind of what you remember your early material was like, and now kind of as you're in a more mature part of your artistic arc, like kind of what you're working on, what you're thinking about.
Yeah, so I luckily got to come into, I started doing comedy later, not super old, but later in life. I wasn't super young when I started. And I also came from, I did acting and I had done dancing growing up. So I always had like some stage ability. So there was that coming into it. And when I'm not doing comedy, still to this day, I'm a photographer, which is almost all the time, how do you get somebody to be comfortable around you and naturally laugh? So my entire life is making somebody be comfortable and get them to laugh. So I had a way easier intro into comedy because I was already comfortable on stage, and my whole day in life is usually making people laugh. So that was not the hard part. I think the beginning was kind of like, I think I used to write so specifically and I'd want to say everything I wanted to say exactly how I wrote it. Like, I think I was a lot tighter in the beginning, and I would get frustrated if I didn't do exactly what I wanted. And there was a lot of that stuff. And it's interesting, like people always ask, were you nervous or whatever? But I guess in the beginning and still to this day, a lot of times I'm blank before I perform. I have like zero, it's like static. And I guess now I trust that way more and I don't stress about it. I think I was a lot more worried about, would I come up with the thing? Would I remember, And I think now it's more like just get in the right energy space and have fun. And trust you're funny, and trust you have enough stuff to talk about because you do. So I think I'm a lot, if anything, I'm a lot looser. I think I was a lot tighter. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. Sometimes I still judge myself about that. I'm like, maybe you should tighten it up a little bit,
Sure.
But I do think that definitely, I think every woman, it's so funny. It's like every woman who starts on comedy, we all start out so vulgar. It's almost like it's like an automatic, like you are a woman in comedy, you have to get out every dick joke you could ever think of, and you got to do it for your first year of comedy. Like you just have to. And so in general, I feel like I love dirty humor. I don't do fart jokes, but I wish I did. I think they're hilarious. Like I'm very immature in my humor. Like the stuff that makes me laugh is the silliest, stupidest stuff. But I feel like in the beginning, that's a lot of like kind of how it started. I feel like there was a lot more just like childlike. It was like a little bit more silly, and I feel like I'm getting a little meatier. I'm getting a little bit. What am I really trying to say? And like being a little bit more careful about like, okay,
Mm,
I'm putting this out in the world, and there's meaning behind this. What is the who's the audience I'm trying to speak to? What is the message I'm trying to give them? And yeah, so I feel like I'm putting a little bit more thought and care as to the meat of what I'm saying, but also just kind of trusting and having a lot less judgment. I think in the beginning I had a lot more judgment.
yeah, yeah, that makes a
Mm.
ton of sense. Are there any like really super technical things you find yourself working on?
Really technical things I'm working on.
Yeah.
I feel like I wish I was working on technical things. I'm like, so I'm like doing more character work recently. Um,
Cool.
and that's going really well. I developed so have you ever heard of a comedian named Dr. Anna Lepoli? She travels all around and she does a show called Comedians in Drag Doing Comedy.
No.
Amazing. Totally, you'll love her. But she goes like literally has done it in almost every state in the US, and she's brought it to Canada, and it's all comedians dressed in drag. So I first developed this character, Abraham, or Abe the Babe, while I was doing her show. However, it happened during Pride Month, and then everyone wanted Abraham to host their shows. So I was almost like stuck with this man for like a week in June, to the point where I
Oh
almost
my
like had to
God.
kill him because everyone like liked him better than me. Like they were like, I had women flooding my DMs. Like they were just
Oh
obsessed
my
with
God.
him. And I brought him back she had me do him at the Improv in September. um, so he'll pop in and out, like, but that was just like one character that I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do this well, almost to the point where like I don't even feel like myself, like I am that guy for however long. And
Yeah.
I think it just adds an element of like, you got a theater, and the costuming and all that stuff just elevates your comedy in a way that even if people like don't even necessarily like the joke, they're like everything else they're watching and seeing, that they get on
Yes.
board really quick. So I did mushrooms over 4th of July, and a character came out like really fast that's called Leroy the redneck yoga instructor. And
Strong.
strong. So I
Yeah.
basically was just yelling at all my girlfriends to do yoga as a drill sergeant, but like aggressive. And so now I'm turning it into a thing that I'm going to try to do at like kava bars and stuff. It's like do this redneck yoga classes where it's like working out, but it's funny, and like you're getting your
Yeah.
core work more because you're like laughing so hard,
Laughing.
and you're going to like
Yeah.
chug a beer at the end, like so cuz I'm trying to figure out other ways of still being, able to perform, but it's not only limited to like evenings or
Right.
retirement communities during the day. Like I'm trying to figure out like other things that I can do, because it's like,
Totally.
you know, there's a lot of hours in the day that I could be working and doing stuff. So what other, avenues can I tap into? And I was like, well, the fitness community is massive, especially in South Florida. And not
For sure.
everyone wants to take it so seriously. So I feel like blending
Yes.
those two things, not like I'm incredibly in shape, but I also think that that's like part of it too, is like it keeps me accountable to stay on top of my stuff, because if you're not moving, like your mental health is just, you need it. It's part of it. As much as you
Yes.
need to laugh, you
Yes.
need to be getting off your ass and moving, shaking, grooving. So I think for me it's going to be helpful for me, and usually that's how I look at it. If it's something that I feel like I need in my life, probably other people also are looking for that.
Yeah. Is there anything you feel like you can't talk about on stage because you're a woman?
I think I get away with a lot because I'm a woman, actually.
Mm.
And I'm also get away with a lot because I'm a like kind of dominant woman. Like, I feel like everyone's like, oh, you have masculine energy on stage. And I'm like, it's probably just because I'm like confronting and I'm not scared to like, really ask people direct questions, which I guess is maybe more of a masculine energy, is like being direct, where a lot of times
Right.
feminine energy is beating around the bush and all that stuff. But um so what do I not I mean, it goes back to what I'm saying. Like, can I get them on my side to like me enough? There is certain times where I go into a room, like I've had to perform for all men, and I'm like, all right, we are going to have to keep this
Okay.
surface. We are going to have to not go emotional. We're going to have to keep this more, lots of physical, lots of observational. It's just like I shift a lot based off of who is in front of me. Because, as much as this is for me, it's for them. Like, and if they laugh, then it is for me, then it's good. So I have to
Yes.
pay attention to what is in front of me. And so, yeah, um, in that sense. So if I'm in a room full of men, yeah, I'm not going to do pussy jokes. Like, that's not like they don't want to hear that. And that's fair. That's fine. That's not what I'm going to do. But if I am in a room filled with women, guess what? Like, the period jokes I've been dying to say, they fucking get the light of day, like,
Right.
so it's all depends on where you are, what you can say,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. How long is your average set?
Average set, I guess, is 20 minutes, because I'm regularly, or maybe it's 30 minutes. I don't know. I'm regularly doing like 15, 20 minutes almost every time. It's rare that I'm doing less than 15 minutes. But occasionally, like a couple times a month, I'll do 45 minutes to an hour. So it's like, but in general, I'd say 20, if minimum 15, maximum an hour.
Yeah. If you're doing those like 15 to 20 minute sets, like how many minutes of material do you actually have?
So I rarely do all just material and no crowd work, because
Okay.
in Florida, the attention spans are just not there. Now, and in general, I don't even mean to say in Florida, like, because of TikTok and the internet, like, everyone's attention spans aren't there, and everyone is narcissistic and wants a little light on them, and they want to hear them talk too. And I like it too. I like to hear what they have to say, and it guides me into other directions. So, and I host a lot. So like, I enjoy doing crowd work. So in an average set, I'm probably, a lot of my crowd work is leading to a joke though. I feel like I'm kind of prompting them to go in a direction I want it to go in. So for every question, I reach out to the audience. There's usually a follow-up joke that's already pre-written that I'm coming in, ready to go. So I don't know, out of a 15, 20 minute set, I would say 10 to 12 minutes is written material. Like 60% of it's written material, and then 40% of it is play and other things that like came up because someone said something. And it's awesome because that's where a lot of times I get to like, I write a lot on stage, in the moment, because they just said something that triggered something I've been wanting to talk about, something I've been wanting to write. And then I actually get to kind of play with it in the moment with a person, And a lot of my jokes, I feel like, come from that, is like someone triggering a memory that then I like, ooh, I want to go into that topic later. Let me like play with it right now and then come back to it, refine it, kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. This is a weirdly specific question, but we'll see how it goes. So like within joke writing, I know that there's structures, there's a jungle gym you can use to kind of create the tension you want and then break it with the laughter. When you're just kind of like ad-libbing on stage, what do you do to make that kind of like material you're coming up with on the spot funny?
So I think because I'm like ad-libbing, it's interesting. It's an interesting question. So a lot of times, even when I'm ad-libbing, it's a it's a thought I've already had. It's rare when I'm like completely pulling something
Really, yeah.
that I've never thought of before.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes, okay, so I I have a lot of I'm really good with like some physical comedy and tricks. So sometimes, like, if it's not that funny what I just said, the action I did afterwards, the facial expression I made afterwards will get the laugh. Or sometimes it's just calling yourself out on it. Like, that didn't work. We'll get a bigger laugh sometimes than whatever you just said.
Not the
You
joke.
know?
Yeah.
It's just being honest. Like, oh, like, I don't know where I was going with that, and then they're like, yeah, where the fuck were you going with that?
We agree with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's like little tricks that we all kind of learn to save ourselves, And luckily, I don't mind like wiggling and doing something that ends up working, and I watch it back on a recording later. I'm like, oh God, please don't ever do that ever again.
But I mean, I think that's a requirement of the craft. Like, I know that there are probably some comedians out there who are just so good with their pen that they can like perfectly excavate and craft and carve and like hit every note and like awesome, beautiful. But like, I think it would be risky to aspire to that. And like, I can only imagine the process to get to that point would be like a lot of footfalls and a lot of tripping over yourself and a lot of like giving yourself no grace to have moments of authenticity, because ultimately like that's what those moments are. And like then when they see their humanity, it lets people loosen up, which is what allows them to laugh. Like,
Yeah. No, there's quite a few one-liner comics I work with, and I do not envy them. Like, I can appreciate it. But that does not look fun to me. Like, maybe the writing it, sure, write it. But just the performing of it, I'm just like, it's so tight. I'm a loosey goosey. Like, I don't ever want the same set to ever come out of my mouth. I want it different every time, because then I'm having fun. And also, I have a lot of repeat people coming to my shows. So I want them to know, even if they heard this joke before, they've never heard it in that way. So that they are like also still laughing at the same thing they've heard in the past, even if they know it's coming. So I feel like with one-liners, I've seen it where they like, "Ooh," they forgot where that next line was, and it's almost like delete message, and then they skip ahead, and it's like you could see it. You could see the fucking delete, skip, pause, and like, I would explode. I would explode in my brain if I was having to remember an hour-long one-lining set like that. There's no pleasure in that. Like, not from the way my brain works. For them, they like that. They like every time they get the line, the like synapses goes and they get, like super excited. It's like puppy gets a treat,
Right.
That's not my treat.
No,
Yeah.
for sure. Something I'm curious about, like we talked about this a little earlier, this mentality of like, you got to work hard, you got to be out there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I heard you say like, it's important to me that I have fun when I'm on stage. Like, how do you create balance between those two things?
Between fun and work?
Yeah.
I think it creates itself. Like, just even the other day, I had to go to work. Like, I have a weekly show and a couple other monthly shows that keep me like consistently working. And it's rare that I don't want to go. But the other day, I didn't really want to go. I was just not feeling it. I was in my like cozy little couch dungeon, and I just did not want to get off of it. And I was like, ugh, and I have to go and be pleasant and make people laugh right now. And I just want to fucking not talk to anybody, and like, don't really want to shower. Like, this is like, but I do it because I'm like, it's the job. And I know I love it. So reminding myself, like, you get to do this. So that's fucking awesome. And even if you're going to have some days that aren't your best, push yourself and see what you can do, even at your lowest, you know? And, because it's like, what? Okay, I have to get the energy for an hour. Oh no. Are you going to, I'm like, no, you can do it. 2 hours, you can do
Yeah.
it. You can do it. Even if you don't want to, you know?
Yeah, totally. Um, what comedians out there right now do you look up to or really admire?
I feel like I love comedians. Like I've grown up having such a respect for comedy, good and bad. I see someone terrible up there and I'm like, fuck yeah, you had the balls, you had the courage to do this. So, I respect everyone except I don't know
Very
how
fair.
much I respect the ones that just that just phone it in and don't change
Mm,
after years and years. Then I don't get why you're here. I don't really respect those comics that just have the same set they've been doing for 10 years. And they just, I'm just like, how is this fun for anyone? But I respect the majority of comics. I look up to a lot. I find that I don't watch as much comedy since I became a comedian.
interesting.
Mostly because I don't want to lift or have anything that's gonna be, it's like we're sponges. What we see, what we hear, it's really hard. So I try to not, especially because it's like I'm surrounded by comedy all the time. I'm listening to comedy all the time. So to then also be watching, others comedy, I just like, I don't want to have too much of the same thought. And so I feel like on my spare time, I try to watch other things aside or even do things aside from comedy so I can get inspiration from that. Um, but I used to watch a ton, but it's funny how little I watch now. But basically the easy answer is any woman doing comedy right now, I'm fucking loving it because I feel like there's an explosion happening that is super necessary. Because I look back at like even, the Ellens, the Wandas, the Joan Rivers, like any of those women, Carol, like any of the women that were doing it years and years ago, and how they didn't even really have women audiences. Like it was, like it was a man's world all around, and they were still trying and doing it. And now it's like women are driving a lot of the ticket sales. There are a lot of the who's in those seats, and the reason why any man is in those seats is women. So like they need a sounding board. They need somebody to relate to too, So I really any woman out there who's like succeeding, I'm like super super happy for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Um, did you go to a lot of comedy when you were growing up in New York?
I actually would go like to the cellar. I would go to like random like open mics and stuff because like anytime if I had something to do and like someone's barking, I'd pop in like whatever, like it's like
Yeah.
to me like what you had some friends, you have some drink, like I never really paid a lot to go see comedy. Like I was more like, oh, I happen to be here. I have there's free tickets right now.
Totally.
Why not? But my mom was actually a huge comedy fan and like actually was even at Jerry Seinfeld's show when he announced that he got picked up for Seinfeld. I know.
Wow.
Yeah, she has a lot of crazy stories. Yeah, she went to get an autograph by Roseanne Barr and like Roseanne Barr was like, "You fucking cunt, go fucking die," and signed it Roseanne Barr. And my mom's like, "I love it." Yeah, so
Yay.
she really loved comedy, and I think probably there's some carryover from that, from her loving it.
Yeah, 100%. Um, how do your parents engage with your career now?
So funny, I have very old parents. My dad's 87, my mom's 71, but my mom has dementia. So she's like even
Mm,
older than he is, basically.
yeah.
That's a huge reason. Like I got into comedy a lot to do with all of that. Just to like find an outlet to process the craziness that was going on. But I've been a photographer. Like I said, I started interning in a photo studio when I was in high school. I've done some relationship to production ever since. So, like, almost 20 years of production. And then I had about almost like a 7 year stint where I worked in underfunded schools doing arts programs. So, I had like a nonprofit. And then I started doing comedy, and my parents have never been prouder. Like, I feel like I've done a lot that they should have
That's
cared
awesome.
about, didn't give a shit. And then, like, all of a sudden did comedy, and they're like, this is great. This is what you should be doing. I'm like, nobody's parents want them to do this. But my
Yeah.
insane, crazy parents are like, maybe because they see like it makes sense that I would be doing this. Also, I think being growing up in New York, they saw like people can have a career in entertainment. It's not like that far fetched.
Yes.
So it's not
Yeah.
like, oh no, this can't happen. Um, but yeah, it's sad because my mom's got dementia, started getting dementia like 10 years ago. So
Mm,
before I started comedy, but she remembers that I'm doing comedy. Like that's something, even though she doesn't remember a lot of new information, that's something like she holds on to. So it's interesting, like if it's super important, like she'll store it. But she always
yeah.
wants to come to shows, and I'm like, oh God, I can't be performing and babysitting you. Like it's so hard. And
Mm,
also like she doesn't
yeah.
do well at night. So I'm like, I did perform a show at a retirement community for her, and she does
Nice.
not remember it. So she's always asking, when can you
Mm,
do it? And I'm like, I did it, but I guess I should do it again. So I try to like find some like daytime things that I can like bring her to, but it's also kind of like she's not gonna remember. And
right.
I almost find it's more like if my energy with her is I better spent like doing things with her rather
Sure.
than taking her to my work. Like I'd personally find I think she will benefit more from that. So
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a
yeah.
ton of sense. Yeah, it's so interesting. I also now just have an image of your mom watching you be like Leroy, the
I
redneck yoga
know.
instructor.
I'll make her work
And
out.
it's kind of like, just sit here, mom. Like, it'll be hilarious. You'll enjoy it. Like, I'll be out here doing my thing. And like,
That's
everybody
oh my
wins.
god. I
Feel crazy? Go
maybe
do
I'll
some
bring her to
yoga.
redneck yoga.
I like another thing that I find interesting about like this era of like comedy, yes, but like also entertainment. Like, there used to be tracks, and it used to be like you would start at open mics, and then you would become a regular, and then you could become a headliner, and then you get your Comedy Central half hour, and then maybe you get an HBO, and like it was literally like there was one way. And now it's like I could do a YouTube special, I could do a Netflix special, like I could tour here, I could tour there. Like there's so many different things. Like, do you feel an attraction toward like what's your North Star? Like what would you love to build toward as you kind of experiment with all these different things?
So, in general, I never meant for any of this. This kind of just like happened.
Mm,
I was good. I kept going, kept working, and it's like taken over my life. So I like that. I love that I never really tried and I ended up here. So I kind of like to just let it organically kind of go where it wants me to
yeah.
go, but still paying attention and obviously keep setting goals. So you're naturally growing and going someplace, but I'm not too rigid, and I'll try kind of everything and see what fits and what's taking. I definitely have like some ideas of where I wanted to go, but I'm also like somebody who heard this thing one time that was like, if you speak it into existence before you've done it, you're getting that false sense that you've done it already, so you're less likely to do it. So I don't
Interesting.
really like to talk too much about what I want to do because I want to hold myself like accountable to actually do it and not get the little puppy treats of like, I'm doing this. I'm like, no, you didn't start that yet. Didn't do it.
Not yet. Um,
Mhm.
I, like, I like this is a callback to way earlier in the conversation. Like you mentioned that Leroy came from mushrooms, which I adore. Like, do drugs, whether you consider them recreational or medicinal, like have a relationship to your comedy, or is that like a one-off? Like I took shrooms and something funny came
I don't have time for drugs, sadly.
up? My schedule is full.
My schedule is too full. I'm getting too old, and the repercussions of it, I just don't have the time for it. So I literally have to schedule it in. Like I'm like, ooh, 4th of July is coming, long weekend.
Yeah.
Do them.
Yeah.
This is it. This is your chance. So like I will have like mushrooms for years, and I'm like, fuck, you gotta do these. They're gonna go bad. Like I'm like, so mushrooms are my favorite.
Okay.
I get very creative. Characters have always come out prior to comedy. Like I get very theatrical, and childlike. I love them for that reason. So I think they would go really well with comedy, and I would love one day to almost perform on them because I feel like I already am. The problem is turning it off. Like I don't shut the fuck up.
Right.
So I'd have to be like a one-woman show because anyone else is gonna be like lighting me, and I'm gonna be like, ooh, fireflies. Like I love it. So I do love that. And literally, yeah, I did them for 4th of July. I hadn't done them in probably a year or two. Like it'll be years before I have the opportunity. Not because I don't want to. I just don't have the time. Because I don't know, they last a decent amount of time. And even if the come down and all that stuff is nice, I'm exhausted the next day because I don't stop dancing, I don't stop talking, I don't stop. It's like a full blown, full body. Like I feel like I'm hit by a truck afterwards, even though like it's more from the physicality of what I'm doing. Like I'm climbing trees, like I'm just, I'm a wild animal. So I have to space it out. I don't really like to drink when I perform. I'll have a couple drinks afterwards.
Sure.
I'm not funny if I smoke pot. Never, don't make me smoke pot. And like, there's a lot of comics that they smoke pot to perform and chill on stage. Oh God, I will just stare at the audience and just be really uncomfortable. I did an accidental edible one time. I thought it was CBD, which I still shouldn't have even done CBD because I'm very sensitive to that stuff. But it was early enough in the day, and I was like, okay, like a little CBD gummy, like what's the big deal? I'll chill out. It wasn't CBD, and it did not. It lasted all fucking day, and then I had to go perform, and I was so second guessing everything and like just the different voices in my head. And that's definitely one of the times where I was like, ooh, they're feeling bad for me. Like, because I'm just like talking way too much about shit that's just heavy. Like, I go way too analytical and it's serious and not very funny.
Yeah.
So, weed is not my friend when it comes to comedy. But yeah, no, I don't, it's not something I've necessarily done to explore writing or doing. But the mushroom thing, once I'm sure anytime I do mushrooms, I'll probably get something out of it because of just how they work with me is so playful and perfect for comedy that whenever I do, I definitely like have to have I wouldn't say notebook because you can't write on mushroom, but you audio record and then you listen through a lot of bullshit and hopefully find the gem or have some good friends with you that remember what the fuck you were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Abby, this has been awesome. Where can people find you and what you're doing?
I'm mostly on Instagram, so you can find me at A Ballin Comedy. So A as in Abby, and then Ballin Comedy. And I'm on TikTok, although TikTok, I don't like TikTok. I don't like it because I was doing a show a couple years ago called Bikini Martini, and I would do comedy in a bikini on the beach. It was perfect. And anytime I posted a video of me in a bikini, they would like take the video down and report it. Just even though like there would be people that have like millions of followers twerking in lingerie and they get to be up there. So I don't like them for censoring the bod. I'm not super happy about TikTok for that. But I'm trying to like, there's still a lot of people that are on there, and I've had people find my shows through TikTok. So I'm on TikTok as just Abby Ballin. So ABBYBALLIN. That's my TikTok. That's Facebook if you're old or
Yep.
yeah, I got some old friends on there. So Facebook Abby Ballin. But yeah, find me on Instagram. I'll love to talk to whoever.
Dope. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate
Thank you. This is fun. You're an awesome interviewer.
So, one of the questions we get asked all the time is how can we be more supportive of artists? And sometimes that's actually consuming their art, whether it's buying tickets, streaming their music, watching their videos, etc. But frankly, buying their merch is one of the best ways you can. Our team has finally put together a small package of merch that we're really proud of. It's fun, it's bright, it's colorful. It really espouses so many of the messages that you hear on this podcast about self-love, self-appreciation, and being willing and courageous enough to put your art out into the world. So if you need a gift for yourself or for someone else, please go ahead and take a look. It's jackdawkinsmerch.shopify.com. Thank you so much for listening today. It is genuinely my pleasure, my joy to share these conversations with you. If you are able, if you're willing, please leave a review, hopefully a good one, on whatever platform it is that you're enjoying these conversations. It really helps us with visibility and having these stories be told to a wider and wider audience. There are many, many ways you can connect with us. The best one, just reach out to stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. You can recommend a guest, you can give us feedback, you can send us memes, whatever would make you happy. Thank you again for being here. My name is Jack Dawkins, and we'll see you again soon.